What is going on to all my White Lotus fans out there, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Elliot and this is MovieFiles. We are back discussing the White Lotus Season 2 Episode 5 titled That's Morel. Can't say it as smoothly as Dean Martin did, but funny enough, as he talked about in that song, we have Lucia and Albie maybe falling in love. And speaking of falling in love, I told y'all there might be a threesome happening between our couples, and we'll talk about that. And can we talk about what's going on with Quentin and his obsession with beauty and what that could lead to? We'll be discussing that and so much more in today's spoiler breakdown review. But before we get into it, if you all haven't already, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting that notification bell. That way you can stay up to date with all my White Lotus content. You can also give me a follow on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. All those links can be found in the description of this very video. Which, speaking of this video, do your boy a favor. If you enjoyed yourself, hit that thumbs up button. Hit that share button to anyone and everyone you know that loves talking about this show just as much as we do. But more importantly, let me know your thoughts on this 5th episode in the comments. Deeper meanings, Easter eggs. There was a lot of stuff that happened, especially in the second half of this episode, that I cannot wait to talk about. But let me know your pros and your cons and what you all hope to see in the weeks ahead. Which, speaking of the weeks ahead, just let you all know, episodes 6 and 7 reviews will be delayed about 24 hours. Reason being, as I've mentioned in previous HBO series, I am fortunate enough to get the early access to these episodes, and they gave me the first 5 episodes, and I would watch them like a day or two before it actually premiered to the public on Sundays. But they did let everyone know in the press that they will probably not be giving out episode 6, but they will not be giving out episode 7, which makes me excited because it means that something big is going to probably happen. So just to let you all know, when it comes to the reviews of 6 and 7, they won't be available immediately after the episode ends like I've been doing for the past 5 weeks. I might do like a short review, like my immediate reaction that you all can see on my YouTube channel with my YouTube shorts, but just want to let you all know. And also, mark your calendar. We did this last year. We're going to do it again. We're going to do a season 2 watch along for episode 7 for the finale. So mark your calendars. We're going to be going live in 2 weeks, watching an episode together as a community. With all that being said, let's get into this week's breakdown. Full spoilers ahead. As we open this episode with Albie worse, he goes into the reasoning from keeping this secret from his wife is because he feared that Harper would tell Daphne, who we would know Daphne would maybe confront Cameron, which in return would be breaking bro code. I'm thinking to myself, Ethan, just to shut up, man. You seem like a very smart individual, but right now you seem very stupid, and just to stop talking. But he proceeds to go on and tell his wife that she should be happy because he didn't do anything, especially under those circumstances. Somehow Harper's like, okay, we'll just go about our day. I was mind blown. And again, this is just me thinking, and I know you all mentioned last week when I was just like, why isn't Harper addressing the elephant in the room? And a lot of you all were just saying because she wanted her husband just to tell the truth. She gave him enough leeway, as she says in this scene, to tell the truth, and he decided not to. But I'm thinking to myself, man, Harper, forget all that noise. I mean, just from what we know from her and her backstory, her being a lawyer, her defending people in the way that she does, you would think that she would be a little bit more aggressive in the sense of like, I need the truth right now. But apparently that's not her personality. But we do learn something about her a little bit later in this episode regarding, I think she might want to get some revenge on her husband, Ethan, and it being with Cameron. We'll talk about that later on. But as we get back into it, time for a reality check for Albie as he's saying his goodbyes to Lucia and wanting to hang out with her later that evening. Time to pay up $2,000 for an overnight stay as Albie realizes what this situation really was. We see Lucia is being nice and tells him that he doesn't have to pay and that they can maybe hang out a little bit later, which made me start to think, does she really like him? Like, forget the whole money angle. Does she actually have feelings for her? And are those feelings reciprocated? Especially now that Albie knows her profession. Do you all think this is genuinely... I can say right now, I feel Albie is definitely more into her than she is into him, because if you all go back to the episode a few weeks ago when Albie described the type of girls he falls for end up breaking his heart in some way. We get that with not necessarily breaking his heart, but kind of doing him wrong in some sense. We got that with what's going on with Portia, and I think the same thing may happen with this relationship. But let me know, do you genuinely think that Lucia has feelings for him as she brings up about this whole situation with this guy who's violent, who wants the money. I think we meet that guy a little bit later in the episode, but let me know how you all feel about, as the title alludes to, this young couple maybe actually having true feelings for each other. Let's talk about that in the comment section. As we move on to breakfast time, she asks Portia, do you think I'm oblivious to things? And shout out to Portia, because she kept a straight face when she said, no. I would have immediately, like, my instinct would have been like, yes. And I probably would have got fired. But going back to that, she mentions about getting her marriage annulled, and she's like, oh, I should have realized all the signs. Someone mentioned it in the comments, it was either last week or 2 weeks ago, about Greg maybe being still involved in some of the situations going on here, especially with Quentin. So we'll get into that theory and that conversation a little bit later. But do we think she's going to actually do that? And do we think that she might have already did something to Greg? I have a very dark, twisted theory that I'm going to share with you all a little bit later. But shout out to Belinda from season 1, who Tanya mentions in this conversation, as she talks about how she should have maybe opened up the business for poor women, and that this health worker, maybe sometimes their healths can be curses. Maybe that Belinda cursed her. I don't think that's to be true, but we do remember when she met with that fortune teller a couple weeks ago, maybe it was last week, the fortune teller did have something kind of alarming to tell her, but she didn't want to hear it. So we're going to talk about Tanya and some dark, I got a dark mind, and we're going to share my darkness, and if it plays out that way a little bit later. But meanwhile, with the Grasso family, father and son, or should I say Eskimo brothers, with Lucia, who's now hooked up. We see Cameron's looking at Ethan like, did you tell her? Did you break the code? And they're going to have a conversation a little bit later. But get this conversation between Lucia and Mia, and I definitely think that this punishment line will come back to bite them in the ass, because I've seen my fair share of movies and shows, and when Lucia tells Mia, I think we're okay. I think we're in a clear. I don't think we're going to get punished. That is pretty much a death note for you to get what you don't think you're going to get, because when you say it out loud, when things are looking good, you're on this new path of maybe finding this relationship with this young, innocent, rich kid that she thinks that our boy Albie is. I think that something bad will happen with not just them getting punished, but maybe Albie and Dom and Bird and anyone else attached to this domino effect of Lucia. Let me know your thoughts on all of that. But Portia and Albie having a conversation. She apologized to him about the other night, and they say their goodbyes, and it was almost as if they, first and foremost, they say, okay, this is probably the last time, because I'm pretty sure based on the episode count, we have episodes 6 and 7. They're going to be gone for 2 days, so by the time they get back from this trip with Quentin, their vacation with Sicily will be over. But it almost was like this moment of, I don't want to say disappointment, but it was almost like a regretfulness between both characters. Like almost like Portia was like, man, I wish I would have maybe given him a chance. He's a nice guy. I'm hanging out with Jack, who we'll talk about Jack here. But then also from Albie's perspective, maybe he now knowing Lucia's profession, like maybe there was something there. I don't know if you all got that sense that there was some type of regret and that they wouldn't have been in a relationship, because again, it's just a week vacation, but maybe they would have wanted to explore spending more time with each other. Let me know what you all thought about that scene. And I personally don't think this is the last time they're going to see each other, but really, she got her. And I'm starting to think to myself regarding Isabella, who seems so sweet and so nice, will she maybe take advantage of Valentina now that she kind of knows that there is this type of very friendly relationship that she's presented to her? Maybe Isabella's going to start asking to get off work early, coming in late, taking some days off. I wonder if she's going to take advantage of this situation. Who knows? But we're going to talk about Valentina much later in this breakdown. But it's time to get into the fun times, right? We get some fun stuff going on as the married couples are at their winery, and Harper is drinking like a fish. And things go to the next level as she questions if Cameron and Ethan have ever slept with the same person or have had a threesome. And as things kind of get further along, again, the alcohol's pouring, the emotions are starting to come up, the truths are starting to come up. We see my boy Ethan is starting to get a little bit more honest with his boy Cameron from college. He says to him, you know, Cam, I can't remember the exact terminology that he gives him, but it's a person that has things in life, that have the privilege of certain, elements of life, that when they see someone that's maybe below them, they want what that person desires. And in this example, we see Cameron used to sleep with all the women that Ethan had a thing for. keep that. Remember what I just said, Ethan and Cameron one of the things that Ethan has. We're going to talk about that later. But we see Ethan's like, I've always been smarter than you. And then we see Daphne just sipping her wine like, oh, you going to let him talk to you like that? This episode, I'm going to say it right now, is probably my favorite, especially when we get to the second half of this episode. But I was very on the edge of my seat when I'm just like, damn, okay, Ethan finally kind of stepping up and speaking to, this is probably words he's been wanting to say for the longest of knowing Cameron, but now when he got a little alcohol, get a little bit of encouragement. I said in that review, maybe Ethan has a thing for Cameron, and then I know some of you all were saying in the comments that he might be, I think the terminology or the term is a voyager, someone that gets pleasure of watching other people have sex, which still, maybe both of those things might still come to fruition, but it kind of adds a little bit more context to that scene after this previous scene, because when we see Harper asking her husband and Cameron, did you all used to watch each other have sex? And Cameron says, well, we did have the same dorm room, so I'm pretty sure Ethan may have seen me have sex with someone. And I think going back to that scene when he was watching him having sex with Lucia, this was just like maybe old habits, right? That when they were in college, Ethan used to do the same thing. He would probably watch Cameron having sex and might be a little bit jealous, or might be a voyager, if that's the right terminology. So again, this whole scene is making him watching Cameron get pleasured make more sense, because he used to do this back in the day. I might be wrong on that matter, but let me know what you all think about that forced habit of what Ethan was doing in the beach club, because she says that he's so distracting, aka I want you to stay away from Isabella. I'm just so curious to see how Isabella is going to react to Valentina of probably inevitably confronting her and saying that I like you and I'd like to go on a date with you. And if that response will be, I'm not interested, and maybe she is interested in Roscoe, and we might see Valentina snap, and we'll talk about her a little bit later. But the first half of this episode, it was fun, it was entertaining, but this second half to me is what makes this my favorite episode of the season so far, because this second half was incredible. Let's get into it here. Back with Tanya. Did you all notice that Quentin was laughing at her briefly? Again, going back to my idea of Quentin maybe playing some game, when we see Tanya, who, again, Tanya's rich, y'all. Y'all don't forget who her father is. She was born from money. But you couldn't tell, because she's like, this is the next level of rich. When they're at this opera, which we'll talk about the significance of the opera they're going to here, when she's there, she sees this woman and she immediately thinks she's royalty, and she says that, oh, is that the Queen of Sicily? And we see the response from Quentin is he looks at his friends and just says, yeah, it is. And the reason he says that, he laughs at her, is because, if I'm not mistaken, Sicily hasn't had a queen like since the early 1400s, so of course that's not a queen. But again, it makes me think, are they poking fun of her? Are they just being funny, and like she's just like they're laughing at her and not with her? I'm just so interested to see what is the true intentions from them. But I want to talk about this here for a second, because the name of the opera that they're actually, Dad, you weren't so discreet. You don't think Mom was miserable in a relationship? And we hear Bert, and I think this is so interesting, this parallels here. Bert's oblivious to this. Talk about Tanya being oblivious. He was oblivious to the fact that his wife was miserable throughout their 50-something year marriage, and he just had in his head his point of view. I was discreet. I kept my affairs to the side, and I came home. I was a husband. I was a father to you all, and he has his side of the story. But meanwhile, Dom has his side of the story, and thinking about how that parallels to what's going on with our current married couples, with Daphne, who we know who kind of spends her time elsewhere. We'll talk about the trainer Lawrence here and how she sees a relationship, parallel to how Cameron, how he views relationships. So I think there's a lot of connective tissues of how, again, the whole thing of these husbands and wives living their relationship out in a certain way, but there's so many ways that you can perceive the relationship. So I think there's a lot of connections there. But this brings me to a very interesting point here that I have in my notes as we see.
What about me?
You ever had a threesome?
I think that's so funny that they asked her about a threesome, because if y'all remember in episode 2, I shared a theory with you all, and it looks like that theory may be coming true. Pull up on the screen here. There was a very interesting shot of them emphasizing the door that separates the couples. I'd be surprised if Daphne, Cameron, and Harper have a threesome. So again, I am loving how, and again, they might not have a threesome, but I think as we talk about in this scene, as we see Ethan's just so miserable right now, and it just goes back to Harper getting her revenge. Ooh, that scene had me like just sipping my own wine watching this scene. And I have to talk about it right now. Theo James, who plays Cameron, he plays a cocky, douchebag, charming individual so well, especially when he's sitting there rubbing her leg. I'm referring to Harper, as well as Cameron. And also going back to the conversation that happened earlier in this episode, Cameron's doing exactly what he used to do to Ethan when they were in college. Ethan has his wife who he loves, and now we see Cameron wants what he loves because this is what he used to do to Ethan when they were in college. So we're playing it back, y'all. I'm loving the connective tissues, but the question is, will Harper take the bait, or will Harper be the one leading the charge to hooking up with Cameron? And again, y'all remember what Cameron did a couple weeks ago when he was undressing in front of her. Let's talk about this scene here as we see Cameron and Harper having a moment in their room, but then Cameron's changing his pants with Harper, who can clearly see him in the bathroom mirror. To half of you all, will there be some cheating going on between those two? Harper hates him, and that's like the stereotypical TV movie trope, right? The character that hates one character but ends up like doing something stupid, like cheating on them. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I wouldn't be surprised. Let me know your thoughts on that scene, and do you see those two crossing paths? So I wasn't too far off. We'll see how all this plays out. But speaking of playing out, let's talk about what's going on with Val.
Cos'è che è giusto?
She manages to convince her to let her pay, and then we also see that Lucia says to her, "Have me regret this." So now the couple questions I'm going to pose to you all. Number one, will we see Valentina wants to take up her offer of loosening her up and maybe hooking up with Mia, or will she approach Mia in the sense of maybe help me loosen up the reins and help me give me some skill, give me some game of how I can talk to Isabella into liking me? And this goes back to when I mentioned a little bit earlier, seeing Valentina snap. Maybe all this is going to backfire on Valentina. She's going to maybe get some game from Mia. She's going to give that game to Isabella, and Isabella is not going to reciprocate that. She's not interested in her, and maybe we're going to see, because I know someone mentioned in the comments that maybe those bodies that we find in the water is from Valentina snapping and maybe killing Mia, maybe killing Isabella, Rocco. Well, we know it's not Rocco because he was alive when they found the bodies, but maybe it was Isabella's body. Maybe it was Mia's body. Maybe it was some other character. So let me know if that's something you all think about it. And also, too, how did Mia know that it's gay? Like, I know women have really good intuition, but if they would have had Mia in the scenes when we saw, like, Mia was maybe in a corner and she saw Valentina flirting with Isabella, and maybe that's where she got that inkling. But and again, maybe I'm just ignorant to the fact that maybe it was very obvious that she was gay prior to the scenes that we saw with Isabella. So I'm just very curious on how Mia knew that. But let me know your thoughts on all that, and if we're going to see Valentina snap after Isabella might deny her. But getting back to what's going on with Harper and Daphne, as Harper tells her that she believes something happened while they were gone, and we see Daphne's response is the following.
I'm sure whatever happened wasn't a big deal. And if anything ever did happen, do what you have to do to make yourself feel better about it.
She goes on and talks about her free time with her trainer, Lawrence, and she shows her a picture, which happens to be a picture of her kids, and she suggests to Harper that she should get her own trainer. Can we rewind that scene just a quick second here? That moment when she thinks she's showing Harper her boy toy, her boyfriend, her side piece, or her baby daddy on her phone, it's a picture of her kid who's holding her newborn. Her kid, her oldest kid, had a hair of blonde head on his head, and last time I saw, Cameron didn't have blonde hair. She doesn't really, Daphne, you could say, have like darker blonde hair. She's almost like a brunette, but that one kid doesn't look like it would be Cameron's son, which makes me think, especially knowing that youngest kid had black hair like Cameron, did that scene just allude to the fact that Lawrence and Daphne have a child together and it's their oldest son?
Listen to how she describes Lawrence.
So handsome, he has blonde hair and like big blue eyes.
I definitely believe that's Lawrence's kid.
I could be wrong, y'all. I could be 100% wrong. But again, the way that she knew, she wasn't drunk enough. I don't think Daphne was that drunk. But she's like, oh, I'll find that picture later. I think that was intentional. I think she was telling her a secret that I've been sleeping with my trainer and we might have had a child together. Because she even says she spends more time with Lawrence than she does her own husband. I don't know. I'm in my head. I might be wrong. Let me know what you all thought about that baby and who the father of that child could be. But as a guy that has been threatening her for the money, is he her pimp, or is he just a guy that she slept with and he's getting jealous because she's hanging out with another guy? And more importantly, is this guy, if he is the pimp, if he is a jealous ex-boyfriend or ex-person that she hooked up with, can he be the one that's I'm thinking of all these murderers killing people. Could he be the one that snaps? And I mentioned how Albie gets involved in this whole money situation. He kills Albie, he kills Dom, he kills another person because remember, there's money that's owed to Lucia, and Lucia said that there's a guy that wants his money. And the people that owe her money right now is Albie and also is Cameron. So who knows? Who knows if one of those bodies are one of those characters? Let me know your thoughts on if that individual will end up being the guy that's responsible for putting those bodies in the water. Let me know your thoughts on that. As we get into Quentin's past love, we learn about a cowboy friend that he was in love with back in the day, but love isn't in the cards for Quentin. Neither is a life without beauty, which he's willing to die for. This whole scene played so creepy to me because the way he was talking to Tanya, he was just like, you wouldn't want to live in a world with beauty, would you? I'm just in the whole, I told you I was going to get dark in the second half of this video. Was he trying to convince her to take her own life? And was he referring to, going back to when people said in the comments, Greg might have hired Quentin to make her cheat on him for he can get a divorce and all that stuff, or going back to that darker theory, convince my wife to take her life or he can get the insurance money for if she dies, which again, I'm pretty sure that's how insurance would work. If your spouse takes their life, you would get their money, inherit their money. So is it that, or is it even something maybe a little bit darker? Is Quentin going to convince his crew and his friends to end up not want to live in this life without beauty, and they all end up taking their own lives, and all those men, or I don't say men because we don't know if it's men or females, they said it was a few people in the water. Could some of those people be Quentin and his friends because, again, they don't want to live a life without beauty? I don't know. Let me know your thoughts on all that stuff there as we wrap up the episode with these so many things that tie into the opening sequence, into what we see in these episodes. Is that portrait, was it alluding to what we just saw in that scene? And also going back to what I mentioned in this episode, will Alexio, I believe his name was, will he be the person that's responsible for putting those bodies in the water? Albie, Cam, Ethan, even throw in Lucia or Mia. So a lot of juiciness, a lot of good stuff in this episode that I absolutely love. And this right now, episode 5 is my favorite of the season. But hey, that's just my thoughts. That's just my crazy, wild, dark theories. Let me know yours in the comments below. Just a friendly reminder that next week's review will be about a day late because, again, they won't be giving out the episodes. And also mark your calendar. Episode 7, we're going to do a watch party, watching the finale together. And let me know in the comments now, too, if you're still watching us to this point. Put in the comments now, hashtag that's Amore. Do that for your boy. But also let me know in the comments if you all will want to do a watch party for episode 6. Put that in the comment section. You all are awesome. Before you all leave, as you can see on the screen now, don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. That way you don't miss out on any of my content. Hope you all enjoyed this review. As you can see on the screen now, come and join the community. Check out my other reviews for White Lotus. Check out my most recent review, and we'll catch you all on the next breakdown.